All right, so it's May, and in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we have a really awesome episode to bring you today, and it was with Dan Lukasik and Cheri Alvarez. Dan is an amazing local attorney who openly talks about his struggle with depression, and as a result, he's been now featured in a couple of great documentaries, including one very recently that's out now called Travels with George. It's about his relationship with a young boy here in Buffalo. Well, not a young boy anymore, and it's an amazing documentary. We talked to Cheri. Cheri is the CEO of Compeer, an amazing local mental health organization right here in Buffalo that we're lucky to have. They talked about their relationship. We talked about mental health. We talked about how you can help your friends, and we talked about the documentary. We covered a lot. It was a really great conversation that I think all of us can really learn and benefit from, so check it out. And as always, this episode is brought to you by my law firm, Richmond Vona. We hope you never need us, but if you do, we're here for you. Check it out. What's up, guys? Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, John.
Well, we just talked a bunch. Is there anything left to talk about? Or before the camera, Brett's like, stop talking. Let me turn the cameras on. No, I really appreciate you guys being here. You know, I'm excited to talk about, Dan, your journey. Cheri talked to you about Compeer, everything it's doing for the community. Obviously, we want to promote Mental Health Awareness Month in May. We want to talk about your new documentary, Travels with George. I mean, there's a lot to cover. So I was like, okay, how should I kick this off? I think maybe it just makes the most sense because, depending on who's listening, there might be some people who are not as familiar with who you are and your journey. And I figured, Dan, why don't you kick it off and just tell us a little bit about, who you are and your relationship with Compeer, and maybe just your relationship with mental health awareness.
Yeah, so I've been a lawyer for over 35 years. For much of that time, I had my own firm and then was of counsel to another firm. For the last 6 years, I've served as the Judicial Wellness Coordinator for the New York State Office of Administration. Mental health and how I got involved is when I was 40, I was the managing partner of my law firm, and I myself was diagnosed with major depression, so that was 25 years ago now, and I still live with major depression. Today, in fact, is not such a great day with depression, and I think that's a common reality for most people. It waxes and wanes. But at some point, I decided to get involved, and part of that journey over the last 25 years has been with Compeer, and they're just such a wonderful organization and doing so much good. More recently, and I think we'll talk about this, are a couple documentaries that we did, and also the launch about 6 months ago of a website called the Buffalo Depression Project, which I started really in memory of my younger brother who had bipolar disorder, and I decided, I've done so much things around the country and the state on mental health, and I thought, well, our community, really needs this. And, my brother didn't have a great experience in our local mental health community, particularly psychiatric community. And so I thought that would be a helpful thing to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a great intro. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, you're modest in your intro. And, as a fellow attorney, I know, I'm not just saying this, we all really appreciate, how you speak out about, your depression, mental health awareness. I know you also have lawyers with depression that we can, touch on too. But I appreciate you being here. I'm looking forward to talking to you about this. So, Cheri, you're the CEO of Compeer. I think a lot of people know about Compeer, but for those who don't, can you just talk a little bit about the organization, your role, and kind of how you got connected with Dan?
Sure. So Compeer is a mental health nonprofit. We are focused on the social support that individuals need when they are struggling with their mental health. And we're also focused on the mental health education that we think all community members need to support one another. Our legacy program is that, matching a volunteer with a individual who's struggling with their mental health for a friendship, something we all need in our lives. Social connection is a basic human need. And we complement the clinical work that many of our clients are receiving. So we're not trying to replace that. It's just that extra layer of support that someone needs to walk the journey of life When they're struggling, they have someone to talk to. When they're celebrating something, they have someone to celebrate with. And we also offer social activities. So that's just bringing people together in a group setting, building relationships through a craft, a game, going to the Sabres game, whatever that is, to bring people together and help them feel connected to one another and to our community. And the mental health education that I spoke of is, we offer mental health first aid as well as other trainings for individuals, businesses to be aware of what mental health may look like when someone is challenged with that, and how do you approach them versus shying away and feeling like you're going to make it worse. But the reality is, if you actually approach them and let them know you're recognizing something might be going on or that you're there for them, it's tremendously better than ignoring them because you think you're going to make it worse.
For sure. I mean, it's like loneliness, wow, is a real epidemic.
Yes.
It's terrible. And can you talk a little bit more about the importance of friendship to combat that, and kind of like what you've seen firsthand in terms of the impact it has on people's lives?
Sure. First, it's an honor to witness it, truly. Like, we are the fortunate ones who get to work at Compeer and see people from our community say, I'm here to help. I'm going to give some of my time back to support someone else. And then the other side, you see a client who bravely raises their hand to say, I need friendship, I need connection, I need someone to talk to do things with. And so when you bring both people together, and we bring them together based on common interest. So we try to start with that basic common interest to then launch the relationship or the friendship. And you first see them connected, and then a couple months later, maybe you see them in activity or whatnot, and you just see natural conversation starting, and the client feeling like, I have someone by my side. Mm-hmm. I can freely talk with this person. I can reach out to them when I'm struggling. I feel more confident. I feel less alone. I feel like someone believes in me and has my back. And it's so powerful. And then at the same time, you see that volunteer shift, like, wait, I was coming here to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And now I didn't realize what I needed in my life, whether it's a sense of purpose or connection or exposure to different things. So both individuals end up really having their lives change as a result of two people coming together for basic human connection.
Yeah, and Dan, I know you agree with that, because we were just talking about that. I can attest to that too, having been a mentor myself with Compeer. Can you I want to ask you about that, but I want to first bring something up because, and I've never met you before. It's the first time we've met. I've heard a ton about you. We have a lot of mutual friends, and the one thing I've always really admired about you is you raised your hand and said, hey, I struggle with depression. I'm willing to talk about it. I'm willing to let people in on my journey. So they feel less alone, right? I'm sure. And I'm sure it helps you too. But I want to note that it's really important. Like, you're a lawyer. You spent your whole career helping people, having to be the guy who has to be strong when somebody else is going through maybe the worst time in their life. And I think, I'm guessing you would agree, like, it's maybe one of the reasons why lawyers don't raise their hands more often and say, hey, I'm struggling too, because they feel like I'm supposed to be the one who isn't struggling or is there for somebody who is. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, what I like to do when I talk about this topic is depression in the law and indeed other kinds of mental health problems like anxiety, alcoholism, suicide is really, to put it in context, an epidemic. One survey of 13,000 lawyers a few years ago, confidential survey, found that lawyers reported that they had a problem with depression, 28% of them in the past year. And then when asked over the course of their legal career, 43%, almost 1 in 2, had a problem with depression. So that is basically, compared to the general population, statistics on steroids.
Yeah.
So it's 4 times the rate found in the general population. So as I started talking about it and created the website Lawyers with Depression and speaking about it, at that time when I came out, we were in a very different place in our culture and legal culture. We're heavily stigmatized. People did not talk about it. So at that time, I didn't know anybody, another lawyer that I knew who had depression, or certainly nobody wanted to talk about it. So 25 years later, I know tons of people across the country who are willing to speak about it, and many, many, many law firms of all sizes, nationally, small, medium, and large, are willing to talk about it. So there's been a lot of progress nationally in our willingness to do that, and then certainly in the legal profession. But it's a big, big problem in the law.
Is it as simple as, it's a high-stress environment, and this is why more people struggle with depression in the law? Or what have you learned about maybe why the profession has such a much higher rate of incidence?
Well, what I like to say is that I teach a class at the University of Buffalo Law School to law students. I'm really lucky to have 50 of them. And they ask the same question, is it the chicken or the egg, which comes first? And what I'd like to say is that all people who develop depression at some point in the general population have certain risk factors. The two of the biggest ones are a family history of someone with depression, anxiety, drinking problem, and family experiences in the family of origin with trauma of some kind, or if not trauma, neglect. These can set the stage for adult onset depression. So people come into the profession with those risk factors. And then I call it the perfect storm, where what you find is they work longer hours, they deal with not just stress, but chronic stress. There's certain demands on them. And what I've concluded more often than not is, number one, a big problem is lawyers don't have time for self-care. They don't have time for therapy or exercise or spending time with their families. And this is an additional risk which is already putting on top of someone's shoulders more bricks. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I say to my law students is, it's true, and we don't talk about this a lot, but many people who go into the law are not well suited for the law. They go into the law because maybe they don't know what else to do after a bachelor's degree. Certainly, that was one of the reasons I did. I had a degree in psychology. I didn't know what else to do.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Yes, it's a very familiar story, John. But the problem happens then, some of it is because of student debt. Some of them just don't know what they want to do in the law. So they come out with really, they take jobs they don't want to do because of financial pressures or family expectations, or maybe they're better suited not being in the traditional practice of law. I saw one statistic where 40% of people who graduate law school don't practice law. They do other things.
Yeah. Wow. And Cheri, can you talk a little bit more about, because I want to lead up to, kind of when you guys really got together and talk more about some things combined. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got involved in mental health and why it's so important to you, because, it really is. We're lucky to have people like both of you and the people at Compeer and those other people in our community who care so much about this cause, because, it's a lot of work, and it can take an emotional toll on you helping others as well. Okay, so can you talk about, you obviously are very passionate about it, because you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't.
True. I don't know why I'm here. My entire career has been in nonprofit work. So I'm motivated and driven by helping others. I couldn't stop helping if I wanted to. And sometimes that actually works against me. I want to help too much.
Yeah.
And not everyone's looking for help. Maybe sometimes they're just looking to talk.
Yeah.
So I know that about myself. And so when I look back and think of, when I was in high school and what did you want to be? And one of the jobs I remember saying is a school counselor. Right? I thought they had cool offices at the school, and I liked that people came in to get some general guidance on direction after school. I like that. I like talking to my friends at that time about what are they doing. So I think it all stemmed from helping in some way. I was fortunate to get a job out of college doing adoption and foster care, and I was in that role for 10 years, and I absolutely loved it. Opened my eyes to what some people are going through in life. I did not know the world that was happening outside of my life, of the baggage you walked into school with, right? And a lot of the things that Dan just talked about, like trauma and life experiences, and you're still expected to show up at school and take that math test focused.
Yep.
So that really opened my eyes, and I thought, I want to do more. I want to help. I was actually introduced to Compeer while I was working in adoption and foster care because some of the youth I worked with had Compeer volunteers.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first introduction. Went on to do a couple other nonprofit opportunities, and my master's is in mental health counseling. So it just kind of perfect alignment of I'm going to go back to my mental health roots, take my interest in helping. An opportunity came up at Compeer, and another thing I value a lot is relationships. I love people. I value who they are and what they have offered for me in my life, and I see people helping people in other ways. I love that. I think it's amazing. And so I think it's just a perfect connection for me to be there. I think when you talk to people about mental health, everyone starts to realize, oh, that actually is going to impact all of us, one way or another. We all have mental health. It's a spectrum. Where we are at in that spectrum is what we need to identify with and be aware that it can shift throughout our life. And so we should be prepared for ourselves and for others. And it's a beautiful thing, truly. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's just a beautiful thing to see people, everyday people say, I want to help.
Yeah.
How can I do that? Professionally, personally? And I get to sit front row and witness it all.
That's awesome. And you came in as CEO, and you come in, and I know a lot of the people that work at Compeer, all these amazing people who are doing great things. It's been around for a while. How do you approach that? Like coming in as a new leader, and maybe like, how do you approach coming in knowing that these things are set up? You don't want to break things, but then you want to put your own spin on things. Like, can you talk about coming in and then kind of where you guys are focused now, where you're headed?
Sure. So I transitioned from Chief Operating Officer to CEO while at Compeer. I've been there 9 years. And what I was excited to first focus on in the role of CEO was culture. We have to apply what we help everyone else with. We have to apply that to ourselves.
Smart, yeah.
And Dan talked about the self-care piece. We shifted to a 4.5-day work week. Friday afternoons are focused on mental health. What do you need to do for yourself on a Friday afternoon so that when you show up on Monday to help others, you're in a good place to do so? How can we talk more about mental health? That was going on very, very, very much so already. But what are our conversations about mental health in the office? And then how are we working with other companies to do the same thing? Something that's unique to Compeer is that we are international and Buffalo is the headquarters. So we have focused heavily on our programs in Buffalo. We wanted to start focusing a lot more on the international piece, getting engaged worldwide in the conversations around loneliness and connection, and what are people in Australia doing that we can learn from? What are people in Canada doing that we can learn from? That's been a big focus over the last couple of years and have really put us center stage in a lot of opportunities. Next month, we are meeting with the World Health Organization to talk about social connection and loneliness.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think we've shifted as an organization from just mental health or just mentoring to more social connection, human connection. We fit into so many of those categories, if you will, and I think it's helping to bridge connections between all of those categories and allow us to do more, the more that we're connected with others and they realize the work that we're doing. So I just went on a lot of different roads.
No, you nailed it. That's great. You make my job easy. Let me ask you this, and I promise this is not me trying to be funny. We all live here in Western New York, and you get a lot of comments about, people feeling down because of the weather. Can you talk about whether or not that, that's a legitimate that has a legitimate impact on people's mental health here in Western New York?
I do believe it has an impact on people. Yes, I think, there's many ways, the reasons that impacts you, sure, we're down because the weather is bad. The sun truly makes a difference.
Yeah.
There is a book called Be the Sun, Not the Salt. The
Great
sun
book.
makes a difference,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that, if you walk through your life and on a given day the sun is out, everyone's happy. Person at their grocery store cashing you out, they're in a good mood. Everyone it elevates your mood naturally. And I think the other piece to it is not just the sun, but when the weather is cold, we gravitate towards things that are warm. That's inside. Often by ourselves or with few people. And so we're away from that social connection, that human connection. It is easier to say no to going out to a party or an event. It's too cold. I'm just going to stay home because that's what I gravitate towards. And so you're disconnecting from those conversations or those opportunities to be with others, which is what your soul needs. So I do think it's very real. I think it's a big impact in our area, and I think many people would agree and feel that.
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts on that too? Especially somebody who struggles with depression. Like, what are your maybe like tactics or things you do try to get yourself through the hard times, especially maybe in those long winter months?
Well, I'm grateful that next Thursday I'm going to Sarasota to visit my in-laws. That makes me happy.
Sabres being good helps too.
Absolutely, 1,000%. That helps too. I think that being mindful of where you're at with your mental health is very important. I talk about this with people in general, but with lawyers or professionals in particular, to maybe not think of time management and how you run your life that way, not as time management, but energy management.
Okay.
So taking stock of your day each day, or taking stock of your week ahead, asking yourself and being real honest with yourself, where am I at? Just checking with yourself, how is my energy level today? An example might be, because I'm someone who lives with depression, but it could be loneliness, it could be anxiety. I know today my level of depression is about a 5 out of 6. So I recognize they have lower energy today. So anything I don't have to do today, any social obligations, maybe things even at work, I kick them off. I reschedule them. I decide I'll tackle them at another day when I feel better. So I think energy management is a good way to think of it. And in particular, I think it's accentuated during the winter when we naturally feel more sluggish. We stay inside, as Cheri said. So we have to, as best we can, manage that and try to think of things that counteract that. I think to the best of our ability, we need to be around other people.
Yeah.
That's number one. But I also like what they do in Scandinavia, where they have this whole philosophy about, and there was a recent world data that ranks them the happiest people in the world. They actually celebrate winter. They're outdoors even if it's cold. They make their homes very cozy. They make different kinds of foods and stews. They have lots of candles. They do a lot of fire pits outside. Yeah. So, we all benefit from those extra steps we can take in the wintertime.
That's great advice. All right. So we were talking before we started, but how did you eventually come to get linked up with Compeer? And then I want to kind of lead into how you met George. Sure, I'd love to hear the origin story with you and Compeer.
Yeah, so I think it was maybe 20 years ago I was introduced to Compeer, and I was real interested in their mission and the good work they do. And I was asked to be a board member, which I was, I think, for 3 years, and was involved in all their stuff. And then the then director asked me to be the chair of the board. I don't know how good I was at it, but I tried to be. And I just fell in love with their mission and the good people there. And speaking from my own personal experience, I personally knew how lonely I felt with depression. Not everybody who's lonely has depression or a mental health diagnosis for that matter. But many people, or most people with depression, feel lonely. And that can be due to stigma. Some of that's true. But just as often as I've said, lots of folks with depression don't feel particularly good. It's not only a psychological thing, it's a physical thing. So I know for myself, I would isolate myself a lot. It was hard for me to be around people, hard to bring the energy to be around other people. My favorite hideout place was Starbucks on Elmwood Avenue, where I would go and I would do lawyer work, or if I was having a really tough day, listen to music. But whatever it was, that's how I tried to manage it. I've learned since then that sometimes what we need to do is counterintuitive, or what depression would have you do, not to be so isolated. I often say depression's a terrible liar because it'll tell you things about yourself and the world that make you feel worse, that cause you to isolate yourself. And sometimes you need to talk back to depression or anxiety and do some things in a different way.
So it sounds like, you got involved with Compeer. You started realizing like, hey, you want to get involved with helping others, and maybe it would help you as well. And can you kind of bring us to, I want to start talking about the documentaries. I know there's two, but I think too, I'd just like to hear the story about when you met George, who's your co-star in Travels with George, which we're going to talk about. You met him through St. Luke's after having this foundation of helping others through Compeer. Can you talk a little bit about how this all started?
Sure. Well, I should say first that I'm 100% Polish, which I'm very proud of and is a big part of the Buffalo community. And growing up in that tradition, my 4 grandparents emigrated from Poland. My one grandmother lived with us, so Catholicism, the Catholic faith, is a huge thing, being Polish. So at some point, maybe 10 years ago, when I was really struggling, a friend of mine, a fellow lawyer, said, "Oh, you should go to this place called St. Luke's Mission on the east side." I go, "What would I do there?" And they said, "Well, you might meet some people you like, or you could volunteer or be of service." I didn't put much stock in it, but I went. I met the director and founder, Amy Betros, and I asked how I could be of service. And she said, "Well, we have this child who's 9 years old who doesn't have a dad and hasn't since he was born, and he could use a mentor." And I signed up for that job. And, as I say in the film, it didn't go so great in the beginning. George really didn't particularly want to be with me. And as I tell him now, we laugh about it, I didn't particularly want to be with him because he made that pretty tough. But that began our relationship of 10 years that's still going very strong. And I think that what we tried to accomplish with the film certainly was to talk about Compeer and its mission, but also put a light on St. Luke's, because I feel that what was really good for me, Cheri talked about the soul, and we sometimes don't talk about that as it relates to mental health. But when I was there and started becoming part of that community, that's my parish now, I felt like I was really in the presence of profoundly good people, the best of the best. These are people, the missionaries, the people who work there, who help the poorest of the poor. And to me, when it comes to my own spiritual journey, that's something I really aspire to. I fall far short of that. But I feel like I've become a better person from being around those people. And as George himself has a giant soul, he is just an amazing human being. He's such a profoundly good person. And how fortunate was I to meet this child, and he and I are from such different backgrounds, and to form this kind of love and deep bond. So that's how it began 10 years ago. And then with the film, after the first film, my brother lost in time a bipolar life. That was about the loss of my brother about 3 years ago. The filmmaker, this brilliant filmmaker named Mark Dallas, an independent filmmaker, said, "What's our next film?" And I actually said, boy, that first film took a lot out of me. It was like 500 emails going back and forth. The Patrick Lee Foundation got involved, crisis services. And while it was very meaningful to me, and certainly as remembering my brother who died, I really didn't particularly think of doing another film, or maybe even didn't want to do another one, because it took a lot of energy. But the filmmaker said, "What about your relationship with George?" Who he knew of that. And so I said, I don't know. So we met at Mythos Restaurant in Elmwood, a popular place. And the filmmaker told George his vision. And George listened, and he seemed kind of excited, and we talked about it later, and he was very excited, in fact. And then we met with Amy Betros, the founder of St. Luke's Mission, to tell her our vision, and she blessed the film. And sadly, about a month later, she died. She was going to be in the film, but she's not. And then I thought Compeer in my past, life's a full circle. And I thought, there's lots of ways to find connection. One way certainly is through your faith or faith community, whatever faith you are. But also, Compeer is I believe, a beacon of light, where people can maybe in a more structured way. It's an organization. They provide training to their mentors. And I thought, what a wonderful marriage of two different kinds of things. My experiences with George and Compeer.
Cheri, so you guys get involved. Have you ever been involved in a documentary before?
No.
So what was it like from your perspective? Because you get a front row seat with Dan and George, and you get to talk about your amazing organization. What was that experience like?
It was wonderful. Like we're grateful that Dan is such a champion of our work and truly understands it from being on the board and being really aware of what it looks like and carrying out the role of a volunteer through a different way. So it was an honor. We're grateful, and it was amazing seeing their story happen the same time it's being filmed, right? So we just got to know George based on the film and then get to meet him in person and then talk to him and have these conversations. An amazing young man who will tell you, this isn't about me, this isn't about me, this is about mental health, and this is about our community, which is just amazing. I mean, he really is about helping others. And if his story does that, then that's all he wants. And it's just beautiful. This young man, he could enjoy the limelight a little bit, right? He can say, like, I'm a star, I'm in a film. No, he wants to make sure that people who are struggling with their mental health are getting the help that they need and that there is awareness. So getting to witness him through this whole opportunity, it was fantastic. We appreciate any opportunity to share our story. Our founder, of course, is in the video and sharing her story. And, it's an honor to witness all of that, to be a part of it. Our hope is that it brings more awareness about mental health and how people may be struggling, what everyday people can do to help others, help themselves, and step up to volunteer, too. There's a big need for the volunteers. And Dan is a great, fantastic example of what happens when you step up to volunteer and what that looks like for you and what it looks like for the person that you're trying to help, as are you.
Yeah. It's, it's, like we were talking about before, I think we may even mention when we started it, it is amazing how, you set out to help somebody, like say through the Compeer program, and then how very quickly, even if it starts off like a little touch and go, or you're trying to feel each other out or whatever it is, you soon realize how much of an impact it has on you, like the mentor. I think too, can you speak a little bit about the program a little bit more, especially the one-to-one mentorship, like the friendship program as I refer to it? Because I used to always tell people, I'm like, I think some people think like, oh gosh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do this. Like, it's really, when you break it down, a very small amount of your time that can have such a huge impact on their life and your life.
Right. It is the smallest thing, but such a profound impact. Yeah. It doesn't take a lot of time. I think back to COVID, we had a spike in volunteer interest because I think people saw, well, I'm not driving to work, or I have some more extra time, I'm going to give back. Or I realize what it's like to be lonely and isolated, so I'm going to help somebody else. But I think time is the one barrier that people identify to signing up. I think stigma is the other barrier. But with time, it becomes part of your life, just like any other friendship, just like anyone else that you get introduced to through work, a new colleague, and they want to go out after work, or you want to go join a volleyball team with them. Any new interest is going to take amount of time, but it's about what it gives back to you. Is it a good return of your time, your investment of time? And our volunteers all say yes. They have grown as an individual, as a human being, because of their investment of that time. We ask our volunteers and our clients to commit about 4 hours a month. Mm-hmm. That could be all at once. That could be broken up. That could be by phone, by text. It's however it works for the match. And I think that's the beautiful part of it too, is we're not guiding you through how to spend your time. Get connected with this individual, with your new friend, and then you all decide what's going to work for you. Maybe it's 2.5 hours, and that just works for everybody's schedule. Because our clients can be busy too.
Yeah.
I'm connected with for the past couple of years with a young adult who was in college when we got first connected. She became too busy for me, right? So I'm like, that's okay. I get it. What is your need?
Yeah.
Maybe we communicate by text and phone call during a busy month. It's whatever works for that individual. And we ask our matches to commit about a year. We know through our study that at the 1 year mark is when the true friendship forms. And some of our matches have been matched for 25 years.
Yeah.
And some are like at the 1 year mark, okay, we're going to go our separate ways, and that's okay too. And that's why we talk about that in the beginning, so that when that 1 year mark comes and the relationship ends, nobody's feeling like they did anything wrong. This is actually what is the program. But some continue on. It's up to them.
How much can friendship truly change the trajectory of someone's life?
I believe that friendship, social connection can prevent something as intense as suicide. And that's a very bold statement. I recognize that. But I do believe being connected with someone minimally is going to make you feel seen, heard, valued, that you matter. And all of those things lead up to preventing suicide. Having someone to talk to, having someone believe in you, having someone that you know wants to see you the next day, is invested in your life. It is such a wide range of impact, but I do believe it's as significant as preventing suicide. And I think it starts with that, like, I'm seen, I matter. Like, what I'm going through, someone else knows, and they're there to talk to me about it, that I'm not a burden. Because sometimes when you're struggling with your mental health, you may feel like you're a burden on your inner circle, your family, your friends. This is a new person entering your life in a different way, who hasn't experienced you in other ways, and you may feel like you're not burdening that person as much as you are burdening your friends and your family. So I just think all of that changes someone's life.
And you guys have a saying, check on your friends.
Yes.
And it's simple, but it's true.
Exactly.
Right? I think, like, I always say this too, right? We have friends who, are busy, have families, are successful in their careers. And sometimes the people who are most successful are the people that nobody checks in on, because they just feel like, hey, this guy or this woman's got everything figured out. It's like, no matter if they're your friends or no matter who it is, I mean, it doesn't hurt or doesn't take much time to say, hey, how are you doing? Like, is there anything I can help you with? Or, I mean, how do you approach that? Because I know you're great at it, because you think about, yourself, and then you try to really help others.
Yeah, I think, it's the small things often that add up. When we think of relationships and loneliness, when I talk about this with my students, right, I work with judges and lawyers or just everyday people. I'll use a simple example where we say we don't have the time. We know through pretty comprehensive research that most of us spent a ton of time on our cell phones. Mm-hmm. So people will often say, well, I'm too busy, and I'll mention cell phone use, and they'll say, well, I got to be in contact with my clients or my family. Well, they drilled down on that, and for example, 8 hours, of an adult uses it, on and off 8 hours a day. Fully half of that is social media, surfing the net. So when I talk to the judges or the lawyers or students or anybody, I say, sometimes challenge yourself, with that idea that we don't have time. It's a lot of baloney, really, when we drill down on it, because we do have time. It's a question of how we use the time. And oftentimes we're not aware of it because social media sucks us in. So one of the things I do with my law students is I have them, beginning the first week of class to the 15th week, is they have to keep a log of how much time they spend on their cell phones and how much time that's composed of or made up of social media. And what's fascinating, John, is that over the course of 15 weeks, there's a steady decline in the amount of time on one's cell phone, including substantially social media surfing. So I think it's a question, like anything, of we all can sleepwalk, certainly me too, quite a bit, of being woken up or becoming more aware or mindful of how we spend our time.
Yep.
So that's, I think, something took me 50 years probably to learn, but I think that's an important thing. And I teach that to George. When we pick him up every week, we go out to dinner. He used to love to be on his cell phone when we were driving over to Chef's or something. And I said, no cell phone when we're together. And so what? What are we going to do? We talked about our lives, and he knows 10 years later that's still the case,
At what point in your relationship with George was there a point when it just flipped and you're like, oh wow, like this is something new now? Because I don't want to give anything away, but something that was like super powerful from the documentary was from the beginning you telling him, I love you, George. And it sounded like for a while he would just kind of look at you and like walk away. And again, I don't want to give away too much, but it was really powerful. And it sounds like, or I interpreted it like part of the documentary as meaning like you just kept at it, and then there's a time it flipped. And I would love to kind of hear about that.
Yeah, well, in a certain regard, George's experience and my experience with him isn't unique. No matter what walk of life we come from, we often don't hear that, right? Some people never hear it from their parents growing up or their best friends or their teachers or coaches. So I certainly did not hear that. My dad was a really bad alcoholic who died of alcoholism when he's 56. I was 19. And he could sometimes be physically abusive, but more often than not, emotionally abusive. So I never heard something like, I love you. So I began saying that to George. I don't know where that came from, but I started saying that to him in the beginning, and he wasn't that, if he was receptive, he certainly didn't show it. He didn't say, I love you back. But over time, that took hold, maybe after a year or two, and that started to be one of the turning points. And then at some point, and I don't know where this came from, I would start saying, George, I believe in you 1,000%. And, that also was a major turning point because sometimes love, you could say, is not enough sometimes because it's one thing to love somebody, but, it's maybe an extension of love to say, I believe in you. You're a worthy person. And that really, I think, had an impact on both of us. And I didn't hear that as a child either. I'm not blaming my parents. It just didn't happen. But for some reason, I wanted George to know that, And I think it came out of a place of care and love for him. And he would respond in his own way, which is in the film.
Yeah, you don't want to give it away. Cheri, there's people who I hear this, I'm sure you hear it a lot more than me, where they say, I want to help, but I don't know how to get started. I don't know how. What is maybe some quick advice you'd give to somebody where you say, hey, this is how you can start?
Mm-hmm. I think they can first think about in what ways or why they want to help. Like, what are they looking to get out of the experience? Mm-hmm. So, of course, if it's with Compeer, we offer so much more than just the one-to-one experience.
Right.
You can volunteer at an activity, or let's say you have a hobby that you want to share with others. We'll schedule an activity around you. And let's just say you like crocheting and you want to come in and share that experience. And we invite our clients to come in and learn about crocheting or just crocheting with you. That's a simple commitment, right? That's not a 1 year. That is I'm available on a Tuesday night at 4:00. Let's go. And we do all the work in getting people there and talking about it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they have that opportunity with us to come in, or there's an activity that we're already scheduled and you can just come in to greet people at the door or serve pizza, or sit next to somebody who's working on a craft and work on yours at the same time. Just being present, I think, also lets a lot of our clients know that people aren't scared of them and that we're all human and we can just sit side by side and do an activity together. So I think the third thing I would say, so our one-to-one, our group activity, and then the third is to take the mental health first aid training. Volunteer your time to attend a training, 6 to 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, not 68. Good clarification. And just become more aware about mental health, because you will then naturally support others around you I remember someone who went through the training one time and then reached out to us a couple of months later to say she was in a car accident, she was okay, but the person in the other vehicle had an anxiety attack. And she would not have recognized that had she not gone through mental health first aid and then knew how to respond to her until paramedics and police got there. And she just had to let us know, this is the impact it had on me. I didn't expect to have that car accident. None of us expect to be in someone else's life at that time, but we will be. And we want to make sure we know what to do to be able to help them, because we all want to feel equipped, that we have the right tools in life to get us through. So I think those are 3 ways that they can get involved that are all unique and respectful of the individual's time that they're coming with.
I can also attest to the impact of the mental health first aid training. We brought you all in to do that with our team because of the understandable like compassion fatigue and that our team had, like dealing with so many people like who have suffered from trauma and accidents, and it makes a huge impact, but also with the way in which they deal with each other. And I think one of the things that I found really interesting or important, and maybe you can just touch a little bit on it at a high level, is there are some things that maybe you shouldn't do if you know your friend or someone in your life is struggling. What comes to mind, like, hey, things that you probably don't want to do if you think someone's struggling and you want to actually try to help them?
First thing that comes to mind is don't ignore them because you think you're bothering them. Simple. And I think that comes when you have someone in your life who dies and people think, oh, I don't want to bother them. They're so busy, or they have so much going on, or so many people reaching out. My go-to text is, you don't have to respond. Just know that I'm here. That's it. And then they can choose to respond, or they don't feel pressured to, but they know that you're there. It is such a powerful text to send. Quick phone call, send something. But the worst thing you can do is be quiet and to avoid them.
That's great advice. I see you nodding, Dan. You agree?
Yeah, I do. And, it's not something we're taught in high school or college,
No.
what to say, what not to say. And I think that's why these conversations like we're having today are so important. And, I must say, part of, I don't know if it's my dream or whatever, when I first made the film about my brother, which was 15 minutes long, and we had it at UB Center for the Arts, and then we had a panel discussion. So often communities or workplaces or schools don't know how to talk about these things, don't know how to start the conversation. So my thought was, well, they could take this film anywhere in the U.S. and have their own town hall meeting, their own panel of experts from their own community. And I feel that way about Travels with George. It's such a big topic. I think it's a universal topic about connection and loneliness. And people certainly in our Western New York community or anywhere in the U.S. can take that 18-minute film, have their own, event, and bring people together to talk about this thing that people already, whether they talk about it or not, feel. This is a human experience, and I think Compeer, in a very powerful way, responds to that human experience. So when someone's struggling with a mental health issue and loneliness and connection, there's a loving response.
For sure.
That's the key.
So I want to take a moment. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the Buffalo Depression Project. I was on the website. It's amazing. Can you just talk about, because it sounds like it's pretty recent too.
Yeah, it's about 6 months old or so. Well, I had, when I developed depression when I was a lawyer, it was a tough ride to recover, and then it was a lonely experience. And I thought, if I ever survive this, which I did, I don't want anybody in my profession, lawyers, to ever feel that kind of pain or loneliness or know where to get help or whatever. So I kind of took that idea and I thought, what does our Western New York community need? And one of the thoughts I had was there's so many great resources, certainly Compeer, but there's others too, mental health resources. But people often don't know about them, or they don't know what they do. Over the 25 years in my community, I've talked to hundreds of people from all walks of life, people who work at Wegmans, doctors, all walks of life who may have either know of me or read about me, and I'll meet them for coffee, of course, at Starbucks. And they'll say, I have this problem, or just as often, my wife does, or my adult child, or my grandparents. And I don't know the first place to start. Where do I start? Where do I go for help? So I thought, my 2 cents I could contribute to my community is that build a website where people, I can't address everything, but I thought my focus would be on depression. So, for example, from Cheri's organization, we had one of her, your clinical director, I believe. I asked her to write an article. It's on the website. If I'm a person struggling with this, or I know somebody, if I contacted Compeer for that issue, what would happen? What would you do, or how would you help, or how could we do something positive? And that's true for all the other organizations in Buffalo. The first film about my brother, who worked with crisis services. Now, people may be going through something like depression. They don't know what that means. We have mental health advocates that I work with of Western New York, another great entity that does lots of work, not just with depression, but many things. So I asked, for example, the head of the legal department, so they do a lot of SSI or Social Security claims for people with mental illness and depression. I said, if someone called you, right, with this issue, what would you do? I mean, do you charge to do that? How does it work? Most people have no idea. So I want to connect people with these amazing resources. So when and my web designer knows how this works with algorithms, but, if I type in Buffalo depression or Buffalo depression mental health providers or something like that, they would be connected to the website, which serves as like an umbrella to direct people. But it also does more than that, because we're going to be starting a podcast series of interviewing local mental health providers, but also local heroes of people living with depression, because they have a lot to say. So it provides local and national resources. Either I blog about living with it, or I have experts blog about it. It has a post about upcoming events, in the community. So we'll see how it goes, but so far I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's going to go really well. It's a great resource to have in the community, and it's going to be awesome. Cheri, if someone is struggling right now, but is afraid to say something, like, what would you want them to hear?
They're not alone. There are people all around us who are struggling, and the first thing we would want them to do is really reach out, find one person that they can reach out to. And if they don't feel comfortable reaching out to someone they know or in their world, there's several agencies that Dan was just talking about that they can reach out to. There's helplines, there's text lines. We have endless resources. And going off of what Dan is saying, it's being aware of what those resources are, how you walk in the door with them, and what they can do for you. A lot of no cost, free. Compeer is free. MHA is free. But reach out. There are so many people who want to help. And please do not think that reaching out is weak. It actually takes a lot of strength to reach out.
For sure. As May is Mental Health Awareness Month, what does mental health awareness mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question, John. Mental health awareness to me means everyone in the community understanding what mental health is, what it looks like, and how to help.
Well, you're lucky because you get the question second. Dan, what does mental health awareness mean to you?
Well, I thought I was listening to my friend Cheri and you, John, and one of the things I think is relevant, or something that struck me that I haven't spoken about before, is, thinking of how we all can serve in our community. And we're all called upon to do different things to make our small contribution. And, one of my heroes, there's heroes in every faith tradition, but one of mine is Mother Teresa. And she was once asked, there's so much suffering, how do you deal with it all? And she says, we do our part, but it's like drop by drop, the bucket fills up. So maybe what we're called to do individually or organizations is to be that drop. I think of myself, what I do, I, to the best of my ability, I had a lawyer, for example, in our community call me last week with depression, rough things going on in his life. His mother just died. He's, in his 50s. And what I like to do, they'll say that, they'll call me, and then I'll say, let's meet for coffee, Starbucks. And, I'm very lucky that I get the opportunity and I have some time to do that, because I always think on a personal level. I remember there's an old Woody Allen line that 90% of life is showing up. I believe that might be true, but a much more important thing is standing up for people. And, John, you're in your role as a personal injury lawyer. That's what you're doing. And that is a service to those clients, but also the community. And it's St. Luke's taught me another important lesson. The founder taught me an important lesson. When you're helping somebody from anywhere, but, St. Luke's is located in the poorest, most segregated part of the city. Amy once told me, when you help somebody in this community, you're just not doing a nice thing, And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, it's a question of justice, because it's not, those people deserve that care and love and resources to begin with. So what you're really doing, and it's similar to what you do as a lawyer in seeking justice for people, you're really restoring people to their own level of dignity and worth as they should have to begin with. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it just to be a nice person, like, oh, these poor people, or pity these people. No, we're called upon to respond. And I think that's what Compeer does. And to be honest, I think that our lawyers at their best, that's what they're doing.
So we have, obviously, people can find Buffalo Depression Project at buffalodepressionproject.com, lawyerswithdepression.com. And where can people see the documentaries?
Well, right now, we're in the process of, it was shown on PBS a couple months ago, and we're in contact with PBS stations across the state right now, Rochester, Syracuse, White Plains, and Albany, encouraging them to show the film during Mental Health Awareness Month in May. But they can certainly find both films. PBS put them on their YouTube pages so people can watch it, share it with other people. Yep. And that's our biggest hope.
Awesome. And Cheri, if people want to get involved with Compeer, what's the best way to do that, or to contact you all?
They can connect with our websites, compeerbuffalo.org or compeer.org. Both also have links to the Travels with George film. And they can call us, 716-883-3331. They can connect with us on social media. And we are happy to have those conversations and see how we can help, or help you help others, or get help yourself.
Cheri and Dan, thanks for doing this. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on this episode of Angles. I appreciate you listening in as always. And look, I just have one small favor to ask of you. If you got value out of this episode, please go on, whether you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, like, subscribe, leave us a review, share this with your friends. Doing this makes the podcast more visible, ensures we can keep running this, we can keep getting great guests to tell these great stories. So again, if you've gotten any benefit out of this, share with a friend, your family member, whoever. We really appreciate it. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you on the next one.